The badge reader blinked red. Russell stared at the scanner, calm as ever, even as the junior HR rep avoided his eyes. "Russell, I'm just following instructions." Behind him, movers packed his office. The framed photo of his daughter was already boxed. The new boss, clean suit, loud watch, didn't say a word. He simply pointed to the exit. "Jake said your position no longer exists," the HR rep murmured. Russell didn't flinch. He nodded, picked up his coat, the same one he wore for 19 winters in this building, and walked. Nobody noticed the external hard drive in his pocket. Nobody questioned the coffee mug he left behind, turned upside down on his desk, a habit only one person might understand. But to understand how things got to this point, we need to go back to the beginning. Hi everyone, welcome to The Hidden Clause, where every story reveals more than it seems. Let's begin. 19 years ago, Russell Danner walked into that same office with a cheaper suit, a fuller head of hair, and a photo of his daughter tucked in his wallet. Back then, the company was a dozen people in a rented space above a supply warehouse. No hierarchy, no jargon, just systems to build, fires to put out, and people willing to work weekends for stock options no one understood. Russell wasn't flashy. He wasn't loud. But when a server died, or a rollout crashed at 2 a.m., he was the one they called. He never made PowerPoints. He made things work. His desk stayed the same over the years. One cactus, one photo. That little girl in a yellow raincoat at the bus stop. She was 5 when he started. Now she was finishing her master's in environmental law. But Russell never talked about that. He just showed up, every day. And for a long time, that was enough. The first thing Russell noticed was the font. The internal memo, usually plain and in Calibri, now had a sleek serif header, modern spacing, lowercase subject lines, moving forward as one. Then came the welcome email. "Excited to introduce our new CEO, Jake Carver, as we embrace a future-forward, high-efficiency culture shift." Russell blinked. He reread it twice, then went back to debugging a permissions bug in the billing API, something that had survived 4 mergers and 15 software managers. Jake Carver, 37, rolled in the following Monday like he owned the air. Slim suit, white sneakers, subtle cologne that smelled like the kind of hotel Russell could never afford. He greeted everyone loudly, except for the ones who had been there too long. He didn't shake Russell's hand, just nodded. "You must be the back-end legacy guy," Jake said, not unkindly. "We'll get you support. Lot of tech debt here." Russell gave a polite smile. Didn't mention he'd written most of the back end. Over the next week, everything changed. The company's Slack channels exploded with emoji reactions and motivational GIFs. There was a Wednesday Wins newsletter and something called Synergy Hour that involved Team TikToks. The dev team was renamed Innovation Pod. HR started offering digital detox yoga in the break room. But what Russell noticed most was silence, the kind that creeps in without announcement. His calendar started thinning. First, the infra-weekly vanished. Then roadmap sync. Then the bi-weekly call with the client he'd supported for 11 years. He asked Lisa in ops about it. She gave a quick shrug. "I think they're streamlining. Don't take it personally." He didn't. He'd seen waves of reorgs come and go. He'd trained new hires who later became his bosses. He'd stayed through 2 near bankruptcies, 1 product recall, and a ransomware scare that cost the company 6 figures. A crisis he'd quietly fixed on a Saturday without anyone ever knowing. Still, this was different. One morning he came in and found his desk chair swapped for a standing desk unit. No warning, no reason. Just a note from facilities taped to the monitor. "Health first pilot. Feedback welcome." His fingers ached by noon. He had arthritis in 2 knuckles from years of typing in cold server rooms. But he didn't complain. Just brought in a cushion the next day and typed slower. By the 3rd week, his Slack was quiet. No pings, no tags. His email inbox was full of newsletters and auto-replies. Not one human message. The new hires came in waves, all younger, brighter, louder. They wore wireless earbuds in meetings and talked about burning the dead wood. One of them, Jordan, a developer fresh out of a top boot camp, had taken over 2 of Russell's modules without even telling him. One afternoon, Jordan strolled by his desk. "Hey Russell," he said casually. "I pushed an update to the billing logic. Hope that's cool." Russell turned slowly. "Did you test it against the legacy accounts?" Jordan blinked. Didn't know that was still running. It was. It handled over 70% of the platform's revenue. He didn't say anything more, just reopened his own logs and began quietly preparing for the fire drill he knew would come. The final signal was the parking pass. Every year, Russell renewed his reserved spot by the side entrance, close to the server cage, where he often came in after hours. This time, the renewal link never came. He emailed facilities. No response. The next week, a bright orange sports car was parked in his space. Jake's car. The license plate said, V1S1ON. Russell didn't say a word. He parked in general, walked through the rain without an umbrella, and for the first time in 19 years, he began to feel erased. Russell had always believed that the truth was in the logs. He didn't care much for office gossip or Slack threads. But system logs, they told stories people didn't know they were writing. After Jake's arrival, strange patterns began showing up in the access logs. Odd login times, temporary admin roles appearing and disappearing, and external pings from IPs that weren't on the company whitelist. To most, it looked like clutter. To Russell, it looked like rewriting history. He opened a private repo on his personal drive, created a backup script that silently copied log files every 48 hours. The files were encrypted, named innocuously, Project Archive Legacy 22 Zip, Performance Test AUG.CSV. He said nothing, just watched. It got worse. Jordan, the bootcamp dev, had been given repo access that should have required clearance. He'd overwritten one of Russell's data validation scripts without a single pull request. No test coverage. The system started spitting billing errors within 36 hours. Russell fixed it, quietly, no credit taken, no blame assigned, but he started making notes. He wasn't entirely alone. Claire worked in compliance, mid-40s, sharp eyes, dry humor. She'd been overlooked so often she'd started dressing in grayscale, like a human screensaver. But she noticed things. They began exchanging small nods in the elevator. Then one afternoon she passed by his desk and dropped a post-it. Check changelog on contract templates, version 14.2. That night Russell stayed late. He found it. The clause on vendor selection had been edited, removing a key conflict of interest safeguard. The edit had no author attached, no version record. It had been scrubbed, sloppy, but buried. Who benefits from this? He muttered to himself. Jake's old consulting firm, recently contracted for a new infrastructure proposal, was suddenly back in the picture. Claire confirmed it over decaf coffee in the break room. This is how it starts, she said. First the paperwork, then the contracts. Money shifts hands before anyone upstairs blinks. Russell nodded. It's not just incompetence, it's orchestration. At home, Russell became quieter than usual. His wife noticed. You've been different, she said, one night over reheated stir-fry. Is it work? He didn't answer right away. I think they're trying to erase people, he finally said. Not fire, not demote, just overwrite. His daughter called that weekend. Dad, you okay? You sound tired. I'm just cleaning up a mess, he replied, smiling faintly. It'll take a while, but I know where the files are buried. Meanwhile, Jake strutted through the office like a man already writing his exit memoir. LinkedIn posts, podcast interviews, speeches to interns about legacy disruption. But Russell watched the systems, and in the systems, ghosts leave fingerprints. So he followed them, one log at a time. Russell had always believed that the truth was in the logs. People lied, emails were curated, conversations vanished. But system logs? They didn't forget, they didn't flatter. They told stories people didn't know they were writing. After Jake's arrival, something shifted. Not loudly, but in the code. Russell noticed anomalies. Odd login times, short-lived admin accounts, audit trails with missing entries. One user ID kept appearing after hours, accessing folders far outside their domain. To most, it looked like clutter. To Russell, it looked like someone rewriting the rules in real time. He opened a private repo on an encrypted USB he never left at the office. Installed a silent daemon on his workstation that mirrored the logs to a personal archive every 48 hours. Files were disguised. Budget review.xls, UX flowchart, June.png. But each one told a story of a system under quiet siege. He said nothing, just watched. Jordan, the boot camp dev, became the face of the change. He was eager, energetic, and entirely unaware of the architecture he was slowly unraveling. Within a week, he'd overwritten Russell's legacy validation scripts. He bragged in Slack about refactoring bloat and cleaning out spaghetti code. Russell watched the error logs climb. Billing failures, cache corruption, a spike in refund requests. He fixed it, quietly, rolled back Jordan's pushes, patched gaps, resynced legacy hooks. No meetings, no announcements, just work. Then came the message from Claire. A yellow post-it slid across his keyboard. She didn't wait for a reaction. Check changelog on vendor contract templates, V14.2. That night, Russell stayed past 9 p.m. He dug through archived drafts. Version 14.2 had been scrubbed. No author metadata, no timestamp. But the legal language had changed. A clause about external vendor conflict of interest had vanished. The new infrastructure bid? Awarded to Jake's former consulting firm, the one he had no current ties with according to the press release. He didn't need proof yet. He just needed direction. And Claire had given it to him. She was in her mid-40s, with sharp eyes, deliberate speech, and an uncanny ability to become invisible in a meeting. She worked in compliance, but was rarely consulted unless something broke publicly. Now she and Russell shared silent coffee in the break room at odd hours. They didn't gossip. They cross-referenced. There are two worlds here, she told him one evening. The surface, emails, town halls, transparency, and the code underneath. That's where the truth lives. Russell nodded. Then that's where we'll stay. At home, he'd grown quieter. His wife noticed. You've been elsewhere, she said one night, handing him a mug of tea. I think they're erasing people, he said softly. Not firing them, just overwriting them. Is that worse? He thought for a long time. It's like removing code from a system without updating the documentation. One day, something important breaks, and nobody knows why. She didn't press further, just sat beside him on the couch, their knees barely touching. On Sunday, his daughter called. Hey, Dad, everything good? He paused, then smiled. Yeah, just debugging some ghosts. She laughed. You still talk in metaphors. Helps me breathe. Meanwhile, Jake floated through the office like he was already being profiled by Forbes. Talks with investors, posts with hashtags, disruptor-in-chief energy. But he never asked about legacy systems, never spoke to anyone with tenure. Instead, he brought in advisors, consultants, efficiency audits. Claire forwarded him an internal scheduling calendar from one of those firms. Russell recognized two of the room numbers. Both were tied to client migration servers. They're going to wipe the platform, Claire said. Shift it offshore, license the tech, blame the bugs on old code. Russell leaned back in his chair. Then we better give the old code a voice. He didn't rage, didn't confront. He simply expanded his scripts, backed up Claire's files, mirrored deleted clauses, tracked edits in anonymized format. Every piece he saved was another brick in a wall no one knew he was building. And beneath it all, he waited. Because in every system, no matter how flawed, there's always a fail-safe. Russell started coming in earlier, not because anyone asked, no one asked anything anymore, but because the silence was easier before the lights came on. In the stillness of 6:40 a.m., the servers hummed like an old friend breathing in the dark. He brought his own coffee now. The company machine had switched to biometric access for tracking usage patterns, and Russell didn't feel like giving them another fingerprint. By day, he watched. Jake had formed a transformation task force, a half-dozen younger staffers who met daily in conference rooms with glass walls and tech startup slogans on whiteboards. They laughed often, presented slide decks filled with phrases like vertical integration sprint and Q4 detonation levers. Russell wasn't invited, but he didn't need to be. He noticed things, patterns in the chaos that others mistook for innovation. New contractor accounts created at odd intervals. Infrastructure budget surges approved without paper trails. Redacted audit logs, even in his admin-level snapshots. More curiously, there were patterns in people. Dan from Network Ops was the first to disappear. No announcement, no farewell email, just a cleared-out desk on a Thursday morning. Russell checked the internal directory. Dan's profile had been scrubbed. Even old Slack messages showed only a generic, former user. He searched the logs. Dan had submitted a security report 2 weeks prior, flagging an unexplained port breach from an overseas IP. Russell archived the report under a fake invoice folder. Then came Priya from internal QA. Gone, same pattern. And then Lisa, the same Lisa who once shrugged and said, "Don't take it personally." She left a post-it under Russell's keyboard before she cleared out. "You're not wrong. It's bigger than Jake." At home, his wife tried to reach him. "You're not sleeping," she said one night. "You talk in your sleep. About logs, ghosts, fires." Russell stared at the ceiling. "It's like the house is burning and everyone's complimenting the new paint." He meant the company, of course, but she heard the fear underneath. So she reached for his hand. And this time, he held on. In the office, the silence took on shape. Jordan had become more smug. The others, the new hires, avoided Russell completely now. Not out of malice, but because they'd been told something. Probably that he was transitioning out or phasing down. But Russell kept showing up. Quietly, methodically. He added 2 more scripts. One to trace retroactive edits in shared contracts. Another to scrape investor memos and match them with timeline changes in infrastructure decisions. He wasn't paranoid. He was focused. And somewhere in the noise of transformation, a trail was forming. Claire noticed too. They began meeting in the old server room. Unused now, lit by fluorescent flicker and dust. "This goes beyond contracts," she said one morning. "Someone's repackaging our entire infrastructure and reselling it offshore, with Jake as the middleman. Selling a system built by people they've erased," Russell said. Claire stared at him. "We don't matter to them. Only the asset does." "No," Russell corrected. "Only the appearance of the asset. Once the real thing is gone, they can control the narrative." She exhaled. "Then we need a counter-narrative." He started prepping one. A folder called Failsafe, stored offline, encrypted. Inside, a full timeline of employee terminations post-Jake, before and after screenshots of contract changes, metadata trails Jake's advisors forgot to scrub, and a quiet memo, drafted but unsent. "To whom it may concern, what you're about to lose isn't a system. It's the last honest layer of it." By the end of that week, Russell knew they wouldn't fire him. They'd simply erase him more subtly, one permission at a time, one colleague at a time. But he had a secret. He knew the silence better than they did, and he was no longer afraid of being unseen, because now he was watching them. Russell had always believed in clean exits. You didn't slam doors. You didn't shout. You left a system so quietly it took a while before anyone noticed the weight missing from the room. By mid-October, he knew they were accelerating. Claire intercepted an internal email string marked "Confidential Draft," forwarded by accident to the old finance list. The message outlined a post-legacy consolidation initiative. In the attached spreadsheet, Russell's name appeared under Phase 3 sunset. No disruption expected. He printed it, folded it once, slid it into a manila envelope marked "Insurance." He and Claire met less often now, to avoid suspicion, but they worked in sync. She created dummy audit requests. Russell traced the responses. He mapped access changes. She pulled policy exceptions. They mirrored everything off-site, layered through VPNs, hidden in decoy repositories. Each evening, Russell left just after 5, not because his work was done, but to seem ordinary. He kept his office neat, cup facing up, chair pushed in. Nothing on his desktop, except the cactus. Jake had noticed it once. "Old school touch," he'd said walking by. "Nice to see some things never change." Russell smiled politely. Some things don't need to. The final week was precise. On Monday, Russell's access to the staging environment was revoked. On Tuesday, he was removed from the internal Slack channels. By Wednesday, his badge stopped opening the server cage. He logged everything. Late that night, Claire sent a text. "They scheduled the board presentation for Friday. He's locking it in." Russell replied, "Then Thursday, we open the door." He arrived at 6 a.m. on Thursday. He didn't log into his usual terminal. Instead, he used a forgotten test machine tucked behind the print server. From there, he triggered Failsafe, init phase. Scripts launched silently. No alerts. One email queued for delivery at 11 a.m. Another set, with redacted summaries, embedded logs, and time-stamped records, scheduled for legal, HR, and the CTO. He didn't want to break the system. He wanted it to remember what had already been done. At 10:42 a.m., Claire called. They know something's coming. Jake's in a closed door with two of his advisors. Russell stood by the window, watching the parking lot. Jake's bright orange car was there. The plate, V1S10N, gleaming under the autumn sun. Then let's finish it, he said. He walked to his office, placed his coffee mug upside down, the signal Claire would understand, logged out, unplugged his external drive, slipped it into his coat pocket, and walked to the HR floor. The conversation was brief. Jake wasn't present. Of course not. A junior HR rep met him in a conference room with forced politeness. Russell, I'm really sorry, but your position's being dissolved. We're restructuring to streamline operational redundancy. He didn't argue. He simply looked at her, young, nervous, reading off a template. He reached into his coat, pulled out the envelope. This is for legal, he said. You'll want to timestamp it. The HR rep took it, confused. Inside, a signed resignation letter, effective immediately. By the time the first email hit inboxes at 11 hour, Russell was already in his car, driving slowly, windows down, hands steady. At 11:03, Claire messaged, "Fire drill in exec wing." General counsel walked out of meeting, shouting. He didn't respond. At 11:12, Jake just left the building, no eye contact. Still, silence. And then, at 11:30, it's happening. He pulled into the park where he used to take his daughter for ice cream after school, sat under the same old oak tree, watched a squirrel circle the bench twice before darting off into the leaves. He didn't smile, but he wasn't angry either. This wasn't revenge. It was record-keeping. The first alert came at 11:07 a.m. An automated response triggered in the legal team's inbox. Urgent review required. Breach of fiduciary protocol. 2 attachments. 1 video file, screen-recorded logs. 1 PDF with document diffs. By 11:12, the CTO had stopped mid-presentation in the boardroom. Claire would later describe it like this. He was talking about scalability projections, then just froze mid-sentence, like someone hit pause on his entire future. At 11:14, the CEO's Slack went silent. Jake's last message. Let's circle back offline. He didn't send anything else. He didn't need to, because by then the documents were already moving. A mirrored drive appeared in the compliance archive. It was titled, Failsafe, Manifest, Final. Within minutes, it had been downloaded twice, once by the General Counsel, once by someone using an IP registered to the board's independent oversight liaison. Russell, meanwhile, sat alone at the park. No laptop, no phone in his hand. Just silence and wind through the trees. His breathing was steady. He knew not everything would land clean, but truth never lands clean. It lands like dust, silently, everywhere, hard to ignore once you see it. At 11:21, Claire texted again. They're in Jake's office, doors shut, no PR team in sight. At 11:29, General Counsel asked for a transcript from 6 months ago, the one you preserved. At 11:33, CTO just walked out, no one followed. And at 11:40, Board just suspended all third-party contracts pending review. Back in the building, the mood changed. The interns noticed first. Fewer smiles, fewer gifts. The Slack channels fell quiet. Jordan walked past Claire's desk, eyes darting, hands in his hoodie pockets. By noon, Jake's name had been quietly removed from the leadership tab on the company site. There was no announcement, no email blast, no official statement. Just a vacancy where certainty used to be. At home, Russell's wife was in the garden when he arrived. She looked up from the soil and simply asked, "Did you do what you needed to do?" He nodded. She didn't ask for details. She knew the weight of what wasn't said. Inside, he hung up his coat, placed the external drive in a drawer, sat at the kitchen table and opened a blank notebook. At the top of the first page, he wrote, "Integrity is not remembered for noise, only for what stays standing after." By the end of the week, 3 executive contracts were under audit. Claire was asked to consult with internal review, unofficially, of course. She never claimed credit. She just updated Russell via short, dry messages. Structural shifts in motion. Silence used properly. Nobody knows where the first domino fell. Russell never responded to any of them. He didn't need to, because collapse, when done right, doesn't need applause, just enough light to reveal what was already cracked. The email arrived on a Monday. Subject, Ari, advisory opportunity, discretion requested. No sender name in the preview, just a generic board secretary address. Inside, polite phrases stacked like soft threats. The board has reviewed the circumstances surrounding recent events. We recognize the value of institutional knowledge. We would like to offer you a transitional role in a senior advisory capacity. Competitive package, full autonomy, retention bonus negotiable. Your discretion is appreciated. No apology, no acknowledgement of what had been done, or what he had prevented. Just an invitation, back into the system that had quietly tried to delete him. Russell read it twice, then again. He didn't feel angry, he felt nothing. He closed the laptop and stepped outside. The sun was out, the sidewalk warm under his boots. He walked 2 blocks before realizing he hadn't brought his phone. Claire called that evening. "They're trying to loop you back in," she said. "They want your silence to look like a partnership." Russell didn't argue. She exhaled. "You gonna take it?" "I haven't decided." She paused. "It's okay if you do. Just don't let them buy the part of you that stayed." He stared at the offer all week, left it unread in his inbox, even as reminders came. On Thursday, he sat across from his wife at the kitchen table. "They offered me a seat," he said simply. She stirred her tea. "And do you want it?" He didn't speak for a long time. "I wanted the truth to matter," he said, "not leverage." That night, he opened LinkedIn for the first time in 6 months. He didn't post a manifesto, didn't write a thread, just a short message. Legacy isn't code, it's character. I showed up, I stayed, I saw. Some systems remember you for what you build, others for how quietly you leave. Either way, keep the receipts. He logged off, felt no rush. Only the sense that whatever came next, it would be his. Russell returned to the building once, not as an employee, not for a meeting. He didn't tell anyone, just walked in with a visitor badge, nodded to the receptionist, and took the long way to the old wing. His office had already been repainted. The cactus was gone. The wall where his daughter's photo once hung was bare. A younger man sat at the desk now, earbuds in, multiple tabs open, face lit by the glow of 3 monitors. Russell didn't interrupt. He stood quietly in the hallway, unseen. Then he walked to the server room. It was locked, badge access only. His card, of course, no longer worked. He stood there for a moment anyway, staring at the door. Not out of sentiment, out of memory. He built this place, not with slogans or press releases, but in the lines of code that no one bothered to document. He left the building without speaking to anyone. No one recognized him, which somehow felt fitting. That afternoon he met Claire for lunch. She wore a new coat, looked rested. "They're naming a new CTO next quarter," she said. "Someone from the outside." "Smart," Russell replied. "Easier to control the story that way. They asked me to stay on, quietly, advising compliance." He raised an eyebrow. "And you?" She smiled. I said yes. Quiet doesn't mean invisible. They clinked coffee mugs, no toast, just quiet acknowledgement. Back home, he opened the drawer where he'd kept the external drive. He didn't destroy it. He just removed the files, wiped the device clean, left the metal casing, empty now, next to the cactus he'd taken home weeks ago. It was thriving. The next morning, he walked with his wife down to the farmer's market. No headlines, no whispers, just sunlight on the pavement, the smell of roasted coffee in the air. He wasn't trying to rebuild anything. He'd already built enough. And what he built, the part they couldn't rewrite, was still standing. 3 months later, Russell received a letter. Not an email, not a LinkedIn message. A real letter, hand-signed, discreetly worded, from someone on the board. It didn't mention names, didn't admit fault. Just this line near the end. "Some systems are protected not by code, but by the character of those who built them. Thank you for being one of those people." He folded it once, placed it in the same drawer where the empty external drive rested. He didn't tell anyone. Not because it didn't matter, but because he no longer needed anyone else to name what he already knew. Claire sent occasional updates. She never named names, just little phrases. The cleanup continues, legacy being redefined. Sometimes silence echoes louder. Russell replied only once. "Don't let them make you loud to be heard. The quiet ones hold the structure." She didn't answer. She didn't need to. One afternoon, he walked past the campus again. The lobby had been remodeled. The slogan painted over. The building looked shinier, emptier. He smiled faintly, not from nostalgia, from distance. Then he turned and kept walking. At home, he found his daughter on a video call with her law school cohort. She waved him over. "Tell them what you used to do," she said. He chuckled, sat beside her. "I used to build things no one could see," he said. "But when they worked, everything else did too." There was a pause. Then one of the students said, "That sounds important." Russell shrugged. It was quiet, but it mattered. And that's how it ended. Not with a speech, not with vengeance, not with glory. Just a man who walked away without burning anything, because he knew the fire wasn't his to start. Only the truth was. And some truths keep running long after the system logs off. Love this story? Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more. Don't forget to check out the video currently on your screen. You won't want to miss it. See you in the next one.